Hi, I'm Joan Newcomb, and today's morning musings is Suffering is Optional. I'm doing a series of morning musings, and I'm using posts from my blog, Adventures in Density and Effort, as inspiration. Now, I wrote these posts a while back, and the world has completely changed since then. So if I encounter anything as I'm reading the post that seems out of date, I will interrupt myself and give you the most recent information. At the end, if necessary, I will summarize the topic with what's going on in the world today. Also, I have some special offers, so stay tuned to the very end to see what they are. Suffering is optional. Pain is what the world does to you. Suffering is what you do to yourself. Anonymous. Pain is a physical and emotional response, but suffering is a mental reaction. If you watch a toddler begin to walk, they will often fall down and just get up and try walking again. Sometimes, however, they'll look around to see if you've been watching and start crying, depending on how you are reacting. It doesn't do much good to have a temper tantrum if you don't have an audience. Have you ever noticed yourself dwelling on past events? The actual pain from whatever happened has passed, but you're keeping the storyline going in your head. You're creating your own suffering in between your ears. Now, any compassionate person will feel a twinge of pain when observing others being hurt. But suffering comes from replaying the tape inside your mind and taking on their misfortune as your own. Staying preoccupied about other people's pain isn't helpful for them or yourself. It brings your energy level down and keeps you from noticing the wonderful things going on in the world as well. Or what if you feel the need to do something in response to the flooding in Asia or an earthquake in South America? But if you're not a part of the Red Cross or Doctors Without Borders, or you don't have the liquid funds to donate to their plight, sending good thoughts and energy is equally as effective as taking action or sending money. So I'm going to interrupt myself right there because there's so many reports of like sending thoughts and prayers when there's school shootings and things like that. Now, energetically, there really is an impact with real thoughts and prayers, not thoughts and prayers, but no, if you're actually meditating and sending compassion, sending healing energy, there's been studies that show that they actually work. Larry Dossey has written a book that showed that people who were being prayed for, whether they knew they were being prayed for or not, healed better and faster than people who weren't being prayed for. And it also didn't matter if the people who were praying for them knew them or not, and it didn't matter what religious practice or spiritual practice they were doing. It was just the energy of praying. There's always actions we can take, and whether or not we're directly donating to GoFundMe's or to the Red Cross or Doctors Without Borders, we can send energy out through our actions as well. And if you can't help the tragedy that's gone on in some other state, you can work in your own state to stop things from happening, defund the NRA. All right, back to the blog. I go on to say sending good thoughts and energy is equally as effective as taking action or sending money, but your good thoughts need to flow through pure filters. If you are suffering because of their pain, they'll only receive more of what they're already experiencing. There's going to be another blog on this topic, but it's like the difference between sympathy and empathy. In sympathy, there's an energy to sympathy where you're actually invalidating the person because you're like, oh, you poor person that has had this terrible thing happen to you. And it's kind of like saying that they are not the infinite capable being that they are, because whether we feel it or not, we are all infinite beings. We are all greater consciousness manifesting our reality. When you empathize with someone, you are empathizing from your own experience. And there's kind of an equalizing effect. It's like, oh, yeah, I've had hard times too. I totally understand. But you're not invalidating them for it. Because from the spiritual perspective, the more terrible things that we create, it actually shows how creative we are. The more terrible things we create are as equally spiritually creative as creating positive things. So it's more empowering to see them as a capable being, that within them they have the resources as well. When you step back and view the bigger picture of everything, your suffering lessens. It's hard to stay depressed about the drought in Uzbekistan when you see the entire planet and all its weather fluctuations at this very moment in time. Imagine all the weather fluctuations throughout history. If you step back from your own life and view the bigger picture as your expanded self would see you, the daily dramas have much less power over your psyche. And if you view your own life story from the perspective of having a multitude of past and future lifetimes, it becomes just one more interesting book on the shelf of the library of life. So I agree with that statement because in the consciousness shift I've had since I wrote this, I've come to realize that there aren't past lives and future lives. It's all kind of like lasagna. And from the perspective of your expanded self, or from your perspective as greater consciousness, all lifetimes are happening at once. And if you stay tuned to the very end, I will give you a technique for being able to view the world this way. So how can you do this if you are in the midst of a crisis? Know that it's only a small portion of yourself that is experiencing the crisis, and that there's a greater, larger, wiser self witnessing it. Identifying with a larger self lessens the anguish and gives you inspiration on how to best get through whatever's happening. Now, I actually went through something like that just this morning because I was finding myself piling up all the challenges that I'm experiencing right now and all the limitations that I'm experiencing right now, feeling really sorry for myself. And I had to kind of step in as my expanded self and reassure the part of me that was creating the list of grievances, to reassure myself that as greater consciousness, I have a bigger imagination. There's greater possibilities that we're on the way to something better. The universe, the world, reality is reorganizing in our favor. So it's really about navigating life as greater consciousness. Makes it so much easier and less painful. Oh, look at this. Some years ago, I was in the middle of a health crisis, which affected my ability to work. I was also in the middle of a financial crisis. In the midst of this, I had a family member visiting the weekend I decided to move to a less expensive place. Over that weekend, my dog got poisoned, and I had to drive all night to a 24-hour vet hospital in another city to get back on time to greet the movers in the morning. Oh, and I was also in the final performances of a play as well, with no understudy. As I was driving back home, I remember saying to myself, this is not a crisis, it's an event, over and over again. It helped redirect my thoughts from a lot of unnecessary emotional energy and left me clear-headed enough to get through the weekend. 2 days later, I had an MRI and was told I had to have an operation to fix things. That week, I went to pick my dog up from the vet hospital, where the bill to save her life was $2,000. And at this time, I got really pissed off at my expanded self. That saying, you don't get what you can't handle, I felt my expanded self was thinking I was way too capable. 3 days after that, I received a sucker punch from my relative that had visited me. It complimented me on my performance in the play and for the level-headed way that I'd handled the events of the weekend. And then it berated me for eking out a poverty-level experience as a minister when I could be better serving society and caring for my children as a psychotherapist. And that's almost an exact quote. This bizarre statement was exactly what I needed. I had to get angry enough to break through the giant wall of Western medicine and choose an entirely alternative route, which helped turn my symptoms around without surgery. In 6 weeks, my health was back to normal. I have to say, the letter he wrote me thinking that I was capable of being a psychotherapist, I had a degree in spiritual studies. That was my bachelor's degree. And then I had advanced studies as a minister from an alternative church. So I don't know where he got the idea that I was going to be a psychotherapist or something. I also heard that he thought I had a master's in social work. Long time ago, and the guy died in 2013. Back to this. So looking back on it, I think my anger was a survival technique. If I'd lapsed into suffering, I would have been immersed in victim thinking. I would have been incapable of helping myself out of the dilemma I was in. From the bigger picture of things, it was a great experience to bust through that wall, which was really just a pattern in the morphic field. Western medicine has an energetic pattern which we experience as reality, but it's just an accumulation of opinions rather than truth. Finances is an energetic pattern as well. That period of time sowed seeds and set things in motion that redirected me to an expanded experience of life beyond the limitations projected by others. Suffering means you're buying those projections as real, which just creates more suffering. Now, is that any way to enjoy Playground Earth? We're not talking about grieving. That's something different, and for a topic for another blog post. Grieving is a release of energy, but suffering is self-perpetuating. Notice if you're telling yourself any stories that keep you feeling miserable. Imagine sitting in the highest balcony in the back of the theater and looking at your life from that perspective. Look at it from the viewpoint of the director, but not the actor. And imagine being the writer who knows the outcome in the sequel. I invite you to try this for the next week and let me know in the comments below what happened. I love reading your comments. And how this applies to the world today. We are experiencing so many challenges, and there's so much drama, threat, and things going on that pull our perspective down to fighting in the weeds, immersed in the density and effort of reality. When we can shift our perspective to navigating life as greater consciousness, reality reorganizes in our favor, and we can start to see a clear path to where we want to go. And the other thing happens when you're operating this way is you'll find increased synchronicity. You will find outcomes beyond your wildest imagination. So if you like these videos, please give them a thumbs up and like them. You can also click the bell icon to subscribe. And when you do these two things, it influences YouTube's algorithms to share this to more people and get this information out to folks who really need to hear it. And if you'd like a free sample of one of my consciousness techniques, click on the link below to the skybox technique. It's the one that can give you a bigger perspective on life and give you more advanced solutions than you might be thinking of right at the moment. And if you want to learn how to do this for yourself, I have a Manifesting Money and Miracles self-study. It's a great primer for how to work with energy, transform the energy within yourself that then transforms what's going on in your external reality. So click on the link below to Manifesting Money and Miracles to get that. And if you want to know more, my website is joan-newcomb.com. I do individual sessions where I take a look at the essence of who you are and what's going on in your life today. I can answer any questions that you might have. I can look at your future. I can look at relationships. I can look at real estate. I can talk to dead people, and I can help facilitate you energetically for making changes yourself as well. And it's recorded just for you. And if you really want to know how to do this for yourself, Manifesting Money and Miracles is a good beginning primer, but go to my website, joan-newcomb.com, and take a look at my coaching program. I work with you one-on-one and give you advanced consciousness techniques for you to transform your life. So go to my website, joan-newcomb.com, and I'll see you tomorrow in another Morning Musings.